Hello, and welcome back to Nocturne Library. I'm Ava Calloway, and I'm really glad you're here tonight. Thank you for making this little corner of the evening part of your nightly routine, a place you come to soften the edges of the day and drift off. Tonight's sleep story takes us aboard a night train through Austria, where the lamps are low, the carriage is hushed, and each course arrives with the kind of quiet care that makes your whole body begin to let go. If your mind's been busy today, you're in exactly the right place. This one was written by Nora Fielding, and it has such a gentle, lovely atmosphere. You'll settle into a private sleeper as Vienna falls behind, and from there, the story moves at the pace of the train itself. Slow, steady, and deeply comforting. There are small tastes, soft linens, polished silver, dark windows, and that reassuring rhythm of wheels carrying you through the Austrian night. It's a story full of quiet luxury, but in the most restful way. Nothing sharp, nothing demanding. Just the feeling of being looked after. And if you'd like the story and subscribe, it really does help Nocturne Library keep making these nightly escapes. Now, let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, and take one easy breath in and out. And when you're ready, let's begin. Chapter 1. Leaving Wien Hauptbahnhof in the Nightjet sleeper. The berth blanket is already drawn to your chest when the bright platform begins to slide away from the window. The glass, darkened from within, gives back only a faint, silvered version of the brass reading lamp above your shoulder. For a few breaths, Wien Hbf is still there in pieces. White platform edge, a column passing, the brief, clean block of a timetable board. And then the compartment's light overtakes the platform. That is how the journey will go tonight. Dark stations received and released. A tray bridge fitted berth edge to berth edge. Later, the scent of Wachauer marille preserve from the Danube Valley. And somewhere after that, the final square of Sachertorte with unsweetened Schlagobers. You do not need to arrange any of it. You need only lie where you are as the train carries you. The public brightness falls off with surprising speed. What remains is the contained world of the ÖBB Nightjet sleeper. Walnut veneer with its low satin sheen. The brass lamp making a warm oval on the paneling. Cream pillow bolsters set one above the other at the head of the berth. The air has that paper-dry quality common to sleeping cars, filtered and slightly warm, carrying almost no smell beyond pressed fabric, polished wood, and the faint mineral coolness from the window pane near your hand. Under your shoulder blades, the mattress is already settling under you. The blanket lies with a pleasant, even weight over your ribs and hips. Not heavy enough to pin you, only enough to make turning seem less necessary than remaining still. Your shoes are off. One ankle rests against the other under the coverlet. The train has not yet found its full rhythm, but there is movement now. The train takes up slack, a long gliding start that travels through the frame of the berth more than it can be heard. Somewhere down the corridor, a compartment door is eased shut. Not latched sharply, only brought in until the seal meets and the last inch closes with padded care. The sound is so modest that you notice it chiefly because everything near you has become so contained. The carriage has its own acoustics already. You let your head settle a little farther into the pillow. The cream bolster at the back of your neck is firmer than the one beneath your shoulder, and that slight difference keeps your face inclined toward the compartment rather than the window. It is a position that asks very little of the eyes. You can look at the brass lamp if you like, or at the dark pane with its occasional silvered return of your own outline. But there is no need to choose. The berth makes the room feel smaller and simpler. A final brightness from the platform skims across the walnut paneling and is gone. In its place comes the first true sense of departure. Not spectacle, not speed, only insulation. The station belongs to people standing upright under strong lights, lifting bags, checking carriage numbers, making the last practical decisions of the evening. You have passed out of that register. Here, your part is simply to receive what comes. At the berth edge, not yet in use but already anticipated, rests the apparatus that will later convert this narrow sleeping space into something more practical. The tray bridge, stowed with the discreet competence of railway furniture designed for exactly one purpose and no more. You picture it spanning from one side of the berth to the other, level across your lap and the blanket, making a table where a table should not quite be possible. The thought is oddly reassuring. It means that whatever comes next has already been solved by hands more practiced than yours. The train gathers another degree of motion. Beneath the mattress, beneath the polished shell of the carriage, the steel wheel rhythm begins to separate itself from the general idea of travel and become a pattern you can feel. Not loud, more a repeating pressure under the stillness. On a straight stretch, it smooths almost completely. Over points or a change in rail, it articulates itself in a brief sequence, then returns to glide. You breathe in and catch the dry warmth of linen from the pillowcase. The cloth has been laundered to that nearly scentless state proper to good rail service, where freshness is proved by crispness rather than perfume. Your cheek finds a cooler patch and remains there. A small shift of the carriage passes through the berth frame and into your shoulder. The body accepts it at once. There is no need to brace. The motion arrives already moderated by springs, padding, fabric, and the enclosed dimensions of the compartment. When the knock comes, it is so restrained that it seems at first part of the train's own language. 2 light contacts at the door, then a pause. Before you can think of answering, the handle turns with care, and the door opens only enough to admit a person sideways, preserving as much of the compartment's arrangement as possible. He enters with the manner of someone for whom narrow spaces and sleeping passengers are not inconveniences, but the native conditions of work. elderly, certainly, though not frail. His age is first visible in the economy of his movement rather than in any one feature. Dark jacket, immaculate shirt front, hands that know where every edge is before they touch it. He does not bring the dining car with him in any theatrical sense. He brings the same quiet order as the room. "Good evening," he says, and the words are pitched low enough that they settle rather than carry. We are underway. It is information you already possess, but his saying it has the effect of making departure official inside the compartment. You incline your head the smallest amount. Speaking feels optional. He seems to understand this at once. "Very good," he murmurs, and glances, not at you in any searching way, but across the berth, the blanket line, the lamp, the available space. It is the glance of a professional, measuring conditions already mostly known. "If it suits, I shall arrange things here presently." Presently. The word is old-fashioned without display. It carries no hurry. You find that this is exactly what you want. Not to rise, not to negotiate, not to decide between alternatives, but to let the evening be organized around your stillness. He reaches to the lamp, and with a touch so practiced, it barely seems a movement, shades it a fraction lower. The brass hood changes the angle of light. What had reached your eyes directly now falls more fully onto the walnut paneling and leaves the berth in a dimmer amber. The adjustment is slight, yet your shoulders loosen under it. "Better," he says, almost to himself. There is no fuss in him, and no excessive deference. Something steadier than that. He notices where your right hand has come to rest above the blanket, and shifts the folded timetable from the ledge to the opposite side without asking, clearing the line near your elbow. He notes the book face down near the bolster, and places a narrow card beneath its cover to mark the page before setting it aside, not merely preserving your place, but choosing for it the one spot from which your hand could recover it without reaching. Then he moves the timetable another inch, enough that it no longer threatens the space your arm might claim later. He moves things where you would have wanted them. This is the first unmistakable proof of his unusual attentiveness. Not merely that he serves, but that he serves as though certain preferences had been established long ago and need only be resumed. He asks nothing directly. He reads by placement. He asks whether the window vent is agreeable. You listen. The contained ventilation gives a low, steady breath from above, enough to keep the compartment from becoming stale. You nod. He leaves it as it is. Another silvered reflection runs across the window, this time not from the station, but from some passing light beyond the rails. And for an instant, the brass lamp, your blanket, his sleeve, all appear doubled in the pane. Then the outside returns to black. For the next many hours, Austria will mostly arrive this way, passing lights against darkness. The real journey is within arm's reach. He draws the door a little nearer to closed, not shutting himself out, only reducing the corridor's seam of light. From beyond it comes one brief movement of the car, a distant footfall on carpet, then nothing. The train has entered that first settled phase after departure, when everyone who needs to be somewhere has arrived there, and everyone who remains in motion does so by profession. When he turns back, his attention falls for a moment on the tray bridge. His hand tests its placement where it is stowed, not yet lifting it free. Again, you sense that he is reading more than furniture. Width, height, the angle at which you lie. How much room should remain at your sides once the bridge is in place? He is already preparing a future arrangement that will let you stay exactly where you are. There will be no inconvenience, he says. The phrase might sound formal elsewhere. Here it is precise. It means the berth need not cease to be a berth in order to become a table. It means your blanket can remain smooth. It means what comes later will arrive without asking your body to leave its comfortable alignment. You make a faint sound of assent, almost a breath. He gives the smallest nod, as if a detail has been confirmed, noted among others that you prefer not to sit fully upright if there is no need, that your answers come more readily by inclination than by speech, that the right side of the berth should remain a little clearer than the left. None of this is announced. It is simply absorbed into service. For another moment, he stands within the brass lamp's reduced glow, one hand resting lightly on the polished wood near the door. The carriage takes a curve then, and there is a subtle wood creak from somewhere behind the paneling, a reminder that this elegant compartment is still part of a long, articulated train moving west through the dark. The sound does not disturb the enclosure. It deepens it. Then I shall return, he says. He withdraws the way he entered, by inches, and with complete command of his sleeves and shoulders in the narrow opening. The door meets its frame with that same padded finish you heard farther down the corridor before. Once closed, it leaves only the lamp, the walnut sheen, the cream bolsters, the dark glass, and the increasingly regular motion under you. You lie where he has left you, but the compartment is altered by his brief presence. Not busier, more decided. The book has been marked. The timetable has been moved. The lamp has been lowered to the angle your eyes had not known to request. The tray bridge is still stowed, waiting. Outside, another light passes and writes a thin silver line along the window before disappearing. Inside, your hand drifts down over the blanket until the palm rests on the slow rise of your breathing. The fabric is warm from you now. Beneath it, your limbs have begun to feel pleasantly indistinct, as if the berth has taken over the business of edges. The wheels continue their measured work below. The compartment keeps its paper-dry air and amber lamp glow. Somewhere far along the car, too distant to locate, metal touches porcelain with a discreet, exact note, and then another, as if something has already been laid out with you in mind. Chapter 2. The tray bridge and linen set across the berth. He enters with the tray bridge already balanced in both hands. And for the first moment, you are not certain whether so exact a thing can be lowered over a body without disturbing it. The berth seems narrow suddenly, your own place within it more particular than before. He pauses only long enough to read the line of your shoulders and the way your head has settled on the cream bolster, then brings one end down first, testing the frame by touch before he lets the other side descend. The train moves under you in its measured, even way. A slight transfer of weight passes through the mattress beneath your ribs. He lowers it, lifts it again, and adjusts. He has not found the spacing yet. One fingertip checks the side nearest your shoulder. The other measures the distance above the blanket line. He shifts the bridge a fraction toward the window, leaving a clearer lane through the middle of your body where your breath rises easiest. Nothing comes too near the throat. Nothing threatens the place where your head has chosen to rest. Only when the bridge sits level and doesn't crowd you does he let the full width come to rest from edge to edge. That seems to satisfy him. In the lamp glow, the polished wood picks up the warmer tones of the walnut veneer so naturally that it seems less brought in than revealed, as though this private table had always belonged to the compartment in some folded, waiting form. The brass reading lamp still makes one amber circle above you. The darkened pane beyond it still gives back only a dim silvered reflection when the train passes some isolated light. Yet, the geometry has altered. The berth now serves another purpose. You need do almost nothing. Perhaps only your eyes shift toward him. Perhaps your chin lifts by the smallest degree from the pillow. He understands that much immediately, and no more is required. He lays down the first linen. The cloth opens with the restrained rustle of something heavily pressed and carefully stored. You hear the fold before you see it fully spread. A dry, papery sound. Then the softer contact as the linen meets wood. He smooths it once from the center outward with the flats of his fingers. Not a flourish, only the correction of any air beneath it. The cloth lies plain and exact across the tray bridge, its edges running parallel to the berth, its corners squared with the frame. From the pillow, you stop tracking each gesture. A hand enters the lamp circle. Porcelain is set down. Silver is placed. Another fold opens. The tray acquires order by intervals. First, a small plate, pale and cool-looking even in the amber light, set just left of center, rather than directly before you, because your head has remained turned slightly that way on the bolster. Then, a saucer nearer the far side, where it will be available, but not crowding the line of service. A spoon rests across it for a moment before being lifted again and moved elsewhere, as if he had only been testing the spacing. The silver gives one discreet note against china. You hear the precision of it more than the volume. He works with the confidence of someone who knows exactly how much room a sleeping passenger needs, and exactly how much can be borrowed from that room without intrusion. Nothing requires you to tuck in an elbow or draw up a knee. The carriage sways through a gradual curve. The wood gives a faint creak somewhere in the compartment wall, then settles. The maître d' does not pause for it. He has already accounted for motion. His hand remains lightly on the rim of a dish until the train straightens again, and only then does he release it. The pause shows his experience, not merely serving, but serving in transit. Not merely arranging, but arranging for a world that is always moving under the plate. Another cloth appears, smaller, folded into a long, narrow rectangle. He places it near the lower right of the tray, where your hand might naturally fall if later you chose to reach, though you suspect he has already judged that you may not need to. Beside it, he sets a knife with a rounded tip, then shifts it by the width of a fingernail so that its line answers the fold of the linen. Such changes are almost too slight to call movement. Yet, the arrangement looks cleaner with each adjustment. You become aware, as you lie there, of how fully the burden of arrangement has left you. Earlier in the evening, while the station still clung to the train and the platform brightness moved outside the glass, you were still in possession of your own travel. You had chosen where to put your case, how high to draw the blanket, where to rest your shoulder against the bolster. Those were small tasks, but they belonged to wakefulness. Now he takes over the small decisions. You become his charge for the night. The distance of a spoon from your fingers, the open space left above the blanket, the side on which a plate is placed because of the way your head inclines. These are no longer your decisions. They are his, and he makes them with the calm authority of someone who has accepted responsibility, not only for service, but for your ease within it. It is not obedience you feel, nor passivity in any dull sense. It is the comfort of no longer needing to organize the next moment. He brings in the folded napkin next, not yet opened for use, only introduced into the arrangement. Even before later ceremony gives it greater importance, the starched damask has its own presence. For now, it remains folded and upright, a contained shape placed toward the upper portion of the tray, where it can be reached and unfolded at the right time. The lamp catches on the ridges pressed into the fabric. You do not study it long. It is enough to know it is there, waiting in proper order among the plate, saucer, and silver. He steps back half a pace. In that brief stillness, you hear the compartment again in layers. The contained ventilation, the wheel rhythm under the floor, now steadier than before. Somewhere beyond the corridor wall, too far away to localize, a door closes with careful pressure rather than a click. Then the carriage resumes its library-like hush, fabric and wood reducing every sound to its useful minimum. When he leans in again, it is to make finer adjustments. A porcelain dish is placed where the light will strike it cleanly, but not glare into your eyes. A spoon is turned so that its bowl faces the hand from which it will later be taken. You find yourself noticing not the things themselves so much as the intervals between them, the measured space left open near your chest, the lane kept clear above the blanket line. The slight offset between plate and saucer that prevents crowding. Nothing on the tray looks misplaced. Even your breathing seems to settle more evenly against it. The maître d' notices this, or something near it. His attention is not invasive. It lands and withdraws. He sees the way your head has remained in the same place on the cream bolster, the way your hands have stayed under the blanket rather than emerging to assist, the way your gaze follows placement only until each item comes to rest. These are enough for him. He is arranging the tray around the way you're lying. A regular table service would assume a seated body. This one does not. It is built for a reclining passenger whose appetite and fatigue are in delicate balance. He places each object so that nothing will require effort greater than lifting your head, turning slightly, accepting what is offered. The intelligence of that reaches you more deeply than any display could. Beyond the darkened window, one brief exterior light slides across the pane and gives back your compartment in silvered reflection. The brass lamp halo, the pale line of pillow, the horizontal tray bridging the berth, and the figure of the maître d' bent in concentration over a spoon. Then the reflection passes, and the glass returns to depthless black. He smooths the main linen once more, though it scarcely needs it. The second pass is lighter than the first, more a confirmation than a correction. After that, he places one final small dish at the upper left, leaving enough room around it for later service. The porcelain settles with a dry, exact contact against the cloth-covered wood. You can feel the tray now as part of the berth's architecture. Not heavy, not precarious. Present. A plane of order suspended over the slow rise and fall of your breathing. The mattress beneath your side has accepted your shape more fully since departure, and the blanket has warmed where your legs lie still under it. Your neck sinks a little farther into the bolster. The amber light makes the linen look cream rather than white. The maître d' lowers his voice when he speaks, as if the room were already near sleep. Better so, he says. It is not a question, nor is it quite a statement made for reply. It is the professional marking of a standard met. You may answer with only the smallest nod, or perhaps with the fractional softening around the eyes that says enough. He receives that as clearly as words. Then, with no unnecessary pause, he begins to set the silver in the first of its evening positions. Not the final arrangement, not yet, but the opening one. Spoon nearest, knife farther off, each resting in relation to the plate and the folded damask. The pattern of service is set before the first taste arrives. Silver on cloth, porcelain on linen, hand to rim, fold to edge. It is enough that your senses begin to recognize the pattern. Far down the corridor, the trolley gives one last softened hush as it passes another section of the car. A moment later, that sound too is absorbed by carpet, paneling, distance. When at last he withdraws his hands, the tray is complete in its first form. It spans the berth with measured confidence. Linen lies smooth across it. Porcelain waits in pale intervals. Silver rests where it should. The folded napkin stands ready for the next small ceremony. Nothing on the tray jostles. Nothing in the compartment feels crowded. The order of the arrangement leaves your body exactly where it was meant to remain. Reclined, warmed, and increasingly content to be served where you lie. He inclines his head almost imperceptibly, as though acknowledging not you alone, but the whole arrangement. The lamp, the berth, the line of the blanket, the tray now fitted to your night. Then he steps back toward the door, leaving the compartment altered in the most reassuring way. Not fuller exactly, but more exact. After he goes, the room keeps the shape he has given it. The brass lamp burns steadily. The walnut panels carry a low glow. The tray stretches from berth edge to berth edge above you, ready. You look at it for a few breaths more, then less directly, your focus beginning to soften around the plate and spoon and folded linen. The train continues west through the dark, and with each mile it becomes simpler to remain where you are and let the next careful thing arrive. Chapter 3. The damask napkin opened across your chest. It does arrive, though not at once. First, there is the train itself, settling further into its own practiced motion. The distant steel wheel rhythm grows more even beneath the floor and through the berth frame, not strong enough to jostle, only enough to let you feel that the miles are being managed elsewhere. The compartment keeps its paper-dry warmth. A line of reflected lamplight lies faintly in the darkened window, and beyond it, once or twice, some thinner silver passes and is gone again before you can decide whether it was a siding rail, a signal post, or only your own compartment briefly doubled in the glass. You are already arranged as you want to be. Shoulders supported. Head turned only slightly into the cream pillow bolsters. Blanket drawn to a weight that feels exact. The tray changes the feel of the berth. The berth is still a bed, but also now a place set for sequence. Porcelain, silver, linen, wood, near enough to touch. Though you do not need to reach, you find that this, more than the train itself, begins to lower you into the night. From the corridor comes one softened movement, then stillness again. The latch gives the smallest click. The door opens with care measured to the width of the compartment. He enters as he did before, not interrupting the room so much as continuing it. The elder dining car maître d' carries no flourish with him, only the assurance of someone who has done this often enough that each motion has shed whatever was unnecessary years ago. He inclines his head, and when he speaks, it is in the same low professional murmur that seems made for lamp-lit wood and sleeping passengers. A little linen first. You do not answer immediately. There is no need. Your stillness serves as answer well enough, and he appears to read it as such. He comes nearer the tray bridge, his sleeves dark against the amber light, his hands pale and exact above the polished surface. Only now do you look more closely at the folded napkin that has been waiting there since he first set the surface in place. It is a starched damask napkin, folded in a bishop's hat shape. The creases so sharply pressed that the form stands with its own little architecture on the tray. Under the lamp, the woven pattern does not announce itself at once. It comes out only when he turns it slightly. A restrained sheen, a field of floral scrollwork caught and released by the light. It recalls old dining rooms. A fold like this belongs to service that once expected time to be taken with it. He places 2 fingertips at the top ridges and opens the first fold. The napkin gives a dry linen sound, crisp and small in the compartment. Then the second fold. The bishop's hat relaxes into a flatter geometry without losing its discipline. He opens it carefully, without snapping it open. The train takes a broad curve. Somewhere in the wood of the carriage, there is a faint creak, a single note from panel or frame, and then the motion steadies again. His hands pause for that fraction, not because he needs to regain balance, but because timing appears to matter to him, even when no one else would notice. Then he resumes. He lifts the napkin from the tray and brings it toward you with both hands. Not high, not ceremonious, only level and controlled. The linen carries a pressed coolness from the room, from storage, from having been folded long enough to keep its shape. You can almost feel that coolness before it touches you. He settles the upper edge just below your collarbone. The sensation is immediate and precise. The damask is lighter than a blanket, heavier than a handkerchief, with that starched firmness that lets it lie where it is placed. Through the blanket, you feel only part of its weight, but across your chest, where the berth blanket dips and your breathing lifts it by degrees, the linen registers clearly. Cool first. Then, over the next few breaths, less cool. The cloth begins to take your warmth without losing its body. He draws one side outward and down, smoothing it with the back of his fingers, so it lies flat from shoulder toward rib cage. Then the other side. The movement is orderly, and because you are reclined and he is working so close, the whole action enters your awareness, not as observation from a distance, but as something being done in your immediate field of comfort. A slight tug near the sternum, a released crease near the left side. The lower corners arranged so they do not bunch against the tray bridge. You realize, as he works, that he is not merely placing a napkin. He is marking the space where you'll be served. Not in the dining car, not at a table among glasses and lamps and passing steps, but here, above your breathing, within the span from one berth edge to the other. The linen marks that space with an old kind of correctness. It says that the first taste, when it comes, will not be casual. His fingertips pause just once at the center of the cloth, as though checking whether the line is true. Then he makes the slightest adjustment, less than the width of a thumb. It leaves the napkin lying symmetrically over you, its damask pattern nearly invisible again, except where the brass lamp catches it on the raised threads. You look at his hands, because they explain him more than his face has yet done. Older hands, certainly, though steady. The knuckles shaped by years of carrying trays, lifting lids, setting down silver without noise. Nails trimmed short, no ring. The kind of hands that know by feel when porcelain has been properly chilled, when butter has come to the right degree from the cool shrink, when a spoon will strike china too sharply unless its angle is altered before contact. He notices that you have let your chin drift a little lower into the pillows. Better, he says, almost to himself. The word is not praise. It is assessment, and somehow that is more restful. He is measuring comfort the way another man might measure stemware or flame. Your stillness, your angle under the lamp. The room left around your shoulders so the tray does not press too near. These have become part of the service. You do not need to direct him. He appears to have accepted that task entirely. He stands beside the berth, looking down not at you exactly, but at the arrangement as a whole. Pillow, blanket, tray, linen. It occurs to you that he may be comparing this moment with others from long ago, in other compartments, with other passengers who understood such forms at once and expected them without instruction. There is no sadness in the thought, only continuity. The fold, the placement, the pause after. He handles each as if preserving a sequence that deserves to remain intact. Outside, another station slips by unseen, except for a diluted band of light that travels once across the walnut panel and leaves it darker than before. The reflection in the window shifts. He reaches to the tray and lifts the spoon, not yet to serve, only to move it a little farther from the plate's edge. Silver gives the faintest contact against china. Then he straightens the folded corner of an underlinen square you had not noticed before. The adjustments are so minor that they would look like habit to anyone not lying beneath them. But from here, reclined under the brass light, each one lands with the same reassuring precision as the napkin on your chest. He is preventing small annoyances. The carriage sways once, long and low, and settles. The napkin shifts against you by scarcely anything, enough only to remind you of its texture. The starched fibers have begun to ease where your breathing lifts them. It pleases you in the way ordered things sometimes do when you are too comfortable to think hard about them. He notices more than comfort. You sense that too. Not in any invasive way, but in the old service manner that reads preference from what a guest does not bother to mention. The way your head remains supported rather than raised. The fact that you have not touched the spoon to inspect it. That you accepted the tray, bridge-fitted berth edge to berth edge, as if such arrangements were not entirely unfamiliar. If you know it, you need not name it. If you do not, it still serves. His murmur comes again, low enough that it seems meant for the linen as much as for you. We begin very lightly. Begin. The word enters the compartment and settles there. Until now, the tray has been preparation, the napkin a threshold. After this, there will be sequence. A spoon lifted, a first taste. Silver moved and moved again. The night counted not by stations, but by courses. You feel no need to anticipate them in detail. It is enough to know that they are already in his keeping. He places one hand briefly against the tray's edge to confirm its steadiness. The polished wood does not move. Then he withdraws, not fully leaving, only stepping half a pace back so the arrangement can rest for a moment in its finished state. You under the blanket. The cream pillow bolsters at either side of your head. The lamp making a warm oval on the walnut veneer. The napkin opened across your chest, its folds exact, its coolness nearly gone now, replaced by the faint stored scent of pressed linen and the drier note of starch. Far down the corridor, a service trolley passes with such restraint that what reaches you is less a sound than a change in the silence. Wheels cushioned by carpet, then gone. The contained ventilation continues its low current. The train keeps west. You let your eyes lower toward the napkin for a moment. The damask pattern comes in and out as your focus softens. A pale woven gloss, then plain white again. You think how little you are required to do. Lift your head, perhaps, when prompted. Receive what is offered. Rest back once more. Even attention has become lighter. You are not studying the ritual now. You are inside it. When he leans in at last, it is with the same measured nearness as before. One hand hovering to guard the tray, the other preparing for the first course, still out of sight. But he does not bring it in yet. He checks the line of the napkin once more where it meets your shoulder, smoothing a minute ridge with one finger. The gesture is so small, it might have been omitted entirely. That he includes it tells you more than any explanation could. Then, satisfied, he lets his hand fall away. The cloth rests evenly over you. The berth has become a table and remains a bed. The train moves through darkness you do not need to see. And in the amber circle of the lamp, with linen settled and silver aligned, you feel the service draw closer to your body, slower and more personal. Chapter 4. Apricot preserve on a silver spoon. The cloth rests evenly over you. The berth has become a table and remains a bed. The train moves through darkness you do not need to see. And in the amber circle of the lamp, with linen settled and silver aligned, you feel the service draw closer to your body, slower and more personal, until the first taste seems not an arrival, but the next natural breath. He stands beside the tray bridge for a moment, with the composure of someone checking not the objects themselves, but the interval between them. Porcelain, spoon, folded edge of linen, the space above your chest, where the napkin lies flat and cool no longer, having taken on your warmth. The compartment gives one small wood creak as the carriage rounds a curve. The brass reading lamp keeps its narrow amber pool over the walnut veneer and over his hands, which move only when they have decided. On the tray, a little dish has already been placed so exactly that you had almost taken it for part of the arrangement rather than the beginning of it. The preserve within it is not bright in the childish way of breakfast jam. Under the lamp, it has a deeper color, amber brown, with fruit darkened at the edges from slow cooking. When he lifts the dish a fraction and sets it nearer, the scent reaches you before the sight settles fully. It smells of apricot, with some tartness left in it. This is rounder, lower in the air. It carries the warmth of skins and the faint tartness that lives underneath ripe flesh. The fragrance rises only a little in the dry compartment air, and because it is restrained, you notice it more. He selects the narrow silver preserve spoon. The handle is slim and old-fashioned, made for a measured offering rather than scooping. Silver catches the lamp differently from steel. It gives back a softer line of light, less white. You hear the slightest contact as the bowl of the spoon touches the china. Not a clatter, only a neat point of sound, enough to mark the beginning. Then the spoon draws through the preserve with an even pressure that leaves a small, shining furrow in the dish. He lifts just one tasting portion. That is part of his care tonight. Nothing arrives in excess. Each bite is judged not by generosity of quantity, but by precision of shape, by whether it can be received without effort, whether it will rest on the spoon without slipping, whether the scent reaches you before the taste does. He turns his wrist once, almost invisibly, to settle the preserve into the center of the bowl. A little translucent edge catches the light. The rest remains in the dish, composed and waiting its turn. But your attention has narrowed to this one spoonful, and to the hand that bears it. Apricot preserve, he says, low enough. He does not add more. His voice is not explanatory. It is confirming, as if he is setting a card beside a familiar object. Outside the pane-darkened window, your reflection and the lamp's reflection lie faintly over the glass. Beyond them, almost nothing shows. Then, as the train passes some outlying light or a station lamp set far from the main brightness, a pale band slides across the compartment wall and over the edge of the tray. It passes over the silver spoon for an instant and makes it flash. Then the walnut veneer returns to amber and shadow again. The train continues west with the same contained motion, wheels far below taking up their rhythm on the rails. The spoon remains suspended a little above the tray, only enough to let scent arrive first, enough to let you part your lips without feeling summoned. Beneath the blanket, your legs are already heavy. Your shoulders rest more deeply into the berth than they did a quarter hour ago. The napkin lies smooth over your chest, and because it is there, because the tray bridge is fitted berth edge to berth edge, and nothing on it can shift without being noticed, you do not need to lift a hand or reach. You raise only your head a little. He reads even that small movement. The angle at which he brings the spoon changes by a degree, perhaps two, so that your neck does not need to strain, and the preserve reaches you level. It is the sort of adjustment that would disappear in rougher service. Here, it becomes the whole point. You take the spoon, and the silver is cool at first against your lower lip. Then the preserve. Apricot arrives slowly. The first impression is fruit rather than sugar, and after it, a mellow depth that seems to have come from the skins and from the patient reduction of the flesh. There is enough sweetness to round the edges, but not enough to cover them. A small brightness follows at the back of the tongue. You feel the texture too. Not entirely smooth, not coarse. A slight texture remains. He has chosen the spoon well. The narrow bowl lets the preserve arrive in a clean line, so the flavor unfolds without spreading too quickly. You close your lips, and he withdraws the spoon with no scrape against the teeth, no unnecessary sound. For a moment, you do nothing with the taste, except let it remain where it has landed. That, too, seems permitted here. You are not being fed for appetite alone. The bite is small enough that it asks for attention, and small enough that attention does not become labor. You can notice the apricot darkening as it warms in your mouth, the way the tartness returns after the first sweetness has gone, the way the scent rises again through the back of the nose with more weight than before. It is a complete thing in miniature. The maître watches without staring. His attention rests not on your face in any intrusive way, but on the signs service teaches a person to read. The length of your inhale before receiving the spoon, whether you accept it once or after a beat, whether your mouth opens to the full offered shape or only part of it, whether your head settles back immediately or remains lifted a fraction longer, as if considering. He gathers these details as another man might gather coat checks or room numbers. Nothing about him suggests scrutiny. Yet you can feel, with a kind of drowsy certainty, that he is learning you. That thought passes through you lightly, not as a question to solve, more as a small alignment, like silver set straight on linen. There is something in the orderliness of his method that seems older than mere attentiveness, as if the right sequence exists already, and he is listening for it in your responses. He lowers the spoon to the saucer beside the dish. Silver on china gives a neat, dry note. Then he takes up a folded corner of cloth and wipes the underside of the spoon bowl, though no drop threatens to fall. It is simply proper to leave the spoon exact before it rises again. The carriage ventilation breathes its contained warmth from above. Somewhere farther down the corridor, a latch touches metal and settles. No voice follows. You swallow, and the aftertaste remains. Darker now, almost floral for an instant, before it narrows again into apricot. It leaves the mouth refreshed rather than coated. You had not expected preserve to do that. Yet this one does, because it has not been overworked into sweetness. It sharpens the next breath. He notices that too. good beginning," he says. The words are plain, but his tone gives them another meaning. Not praise for the preserve alone, more an acknowledgement that the first measure has been taken and found right. He does not ask whether you like it. The question would be cruder than the service. Instead, he gathers your answer from the fact that your lips part again before he has fully lifted the spoon for a second offering. This time, the preserve seems even more fragrant as it approaches. Perhaps because the first bite has prepared the mouth for it. Perhaps because the compartment has warmed the dish a little more. The apricot scent carries a faint suggestion of stone fruit skin rubbed between finger and thumb. That dry velvet trace just before the flesh yields. Another station lamp, distant and singular, slips over the dark window. For a moment, your reflection sharpens. The line of the napkin over your chest, the pale bolster near your temple, the spoon lifting between your face and the glass. Then the reflection thins again. Outside remains unreadable. Austria passing in fields and cuttings, and sleeping towns that offer only these brief silvered hints. Inside, the compartment has contracted to spoon, breath, and the measured movement of his hand. The second spoonful is no larger than the first. Again, the silver touches coolly, then yields to fruit. This time, you catch more of the preserve's structure. It has been cooked enough to thicken, but not reduced to a paste. There is body in it, a slight resistance before it melts away. The tart note is clearer too, and with it, a mineral freshness that keeps the apricot from turning lush. You think of river valleys without seeing one, of orchards on slopes beyond the dark, of fruit carried in crates and sorted by hands that know ripeness by scent before touch. The thought is brief and unforced. He withdraws the spoon and lets the pause after it widen just enough for you to finish. Then he returns the spoon to the saucer in exactly the same place as before. The repeated placement is oddly soothing. Spoon at this angle, dish just so, linen smooth, lamp unchanged. The regularity of it eases the mind downward. You feel your head sink back into the cream pillow bolster. The fabric under your cheek has the faint, dry coolness of laundered cotton. Beneath your shoulder blades, the berth has taken your shape more completely. The napkin no longer feels like an added object. It has become part of the arrangement of your own rest, as natural now as the blanket over your legs. The train sways once, very slightly. The maître d' sees your eyes lower, then open again. He does not mistake drowsiness for inattention. If anything, he seems to account for it with greater care. The next spoonful he gathers with a little less height, so the preserve need travel a shorter arc from dish to mouth. The gesture is nearly tender, though it remains fully professional, contained within the old exactness of service. You realize that this is how the tasting will proceed tonight. Not by asking what you want, but by reducing every small inconvenience before it can reach you. The third spoonful is the smallest. not because he is withholding, because he has read the pace at which you prefer to meet the flavor. The first established the preserve. The second confirmed it. The third is almost an accent, enough to leave the apricot present in memory rather than abundance. You receive it with hardly any lift of the chin at all. The silver, the fruit, the withdrawal. All of it now so well timed that it seems less like a sequence than a single action with 3 notes in it. When you have finished, he does not clear the dish at once. He lets it remain where it is, near the center of the tray, while the spoon rests beside it. This, too, tells you something. He is not rushing onward. He is allowing the preserve to complete itself in you before the next object on the tray acquires importance. You can still smell apricot faintly in the air above your chest. It mingles with pressed linen, polished wood, and the dry warmth of the compartment, until all of it belongs to the same enclosed hour. He inclines his head by the smallest degree, as if a preference has been noted and set in order. Then, with the same care as before, he shifts the dish back a little on the tray bridge, not away, only into its proper resting place. The silver spoon follows, aligned beside it. The sound is minimal. One light touch of metal to china. One nearly inaudible slide over linen beneath the saucer. Outside, the darkness continues to pass. Inside, the first course is over. You lie beneath the lamp, with apricot still warm at the back of your tongue, and feel the service preparing, somewhere within its own practiced logic, for what should come next. Chapter 5. Seeded Rye Crisps. Warming in the sleeper compartment. You lie beneath the lamp with apricot still warm at the back of your tongue, and feel the service preparing, somewhere within its own practiced logic, for what should come next. The spoon has been lowered. The preserve dish rests where it should, not removed too quickly, not left to clutter the tray. In the amber circle from the brass reading lamp, every surface keeps its place. The polished wood of the bridge across the berth, the opened damask over your chest, the porcelain with its pale glaze, the silver set down without a mark of haste. The train has gone farther into its night work now. The first departure glide is long behind you. What reaches you instead is the steadier measure underneath everything. The distant steel wheel rhythm on Austrian rails. Regular enough that your breathing begins, without instruction, to settle near it. The elder maître d' does not announce the next course at once. He lets the apricot finish properly. You feel that in the pause more than you think it. A different hand might hurry from sweetness into contrast, but his service has its own spacing, and he keeps to it. Somewhere down the corridor, a latch touches metal and then goes still. The compartment remains reduced to useful things. The cream pillow bolsters behind your shoulders, the blanket over your legs, the paper dry air from the vent, and the tray bridge fitted berth edge to berth edge. When he returns to motion, it is with the smallest porcelain plate. You hear it before you fully see it. A dry, light contact as it meets the tray. Not the rounded note of a saucer, not the denser placement of a ramekin, but something flatter, finer. He sets it just left of center and leaves his hand there for a beat, not touching the food itself, only judging the warmth of the compartment around it. Then his fingers withdraw. On the plate are the rye crisps. Seeded rye crisps, arranged in descending size, each one narrow and dark and exact in its own outline. The largest lies nearest your left hand, the smallest nearest the lamp side, where the tray catches a little more heat. Their order is immediately satisfying. Your eyes pass over them and come to rest. They have been placed so that choosing among them will not feel like choosing at all. At first, their scent is almost hidden by their dryness. Then, the compartment warmth reaches them more fully, and the caraway and coriander aroma begins to rise. Not strongly. It does not bloom all at once. It comes in a finer way. First, the darker bread note, then the faint medicinal sweetness of coriander, then the clean, almost resinous edge of caraway. You do not lift your head far. You do not need to. The aromas come to you where you are. The maître d' notices the moment they begin to show themselves. You can tell by the way he remains still instead of serving immediately. Their readiness matters to him. Cool storage has kept them crisp, but too cool, and they would taste closed. All structure and no fragrance. Left too long in the compartment, they would lose the exact dry snap he wants. So he waits at the narrow border between the two, his hands lightly folded. Just so, he says, in the low professional murmur that never rises above the carriage sounds. You look again at the line of them. The largest one has a slight bow through its length, enough to catch the lamp on one edge. Another carries more visible seeds near the center, as though they settled there before baking and stayed. The smallest has drifted by a fraction on the plate. The train takes a curve somewhere out in the dark, and the carriage gives one measured sway. It is enough. The little crisp has shifted no more than the width of a seed. He notices that too. With one fingertip, he returns it to line. The correction makes no sound. The order is restored. Dark lengths stepping down one by one, each with its own edge, its own scattering of seed, its own degree of thickness. The movement is so small that another person might not have seen it at all. Here, it matters. The train is moving. He corrects before anything shifts. You feel in that tiny restored line how much of this service depends on noticing before a thing has properly gone wrong. Outside the window, the glass gives back only a dim suggestion of the lamp and the pale shape of the linen over your chest. Beyond that, Austria continues unseen. Once, a silvered reflection slides along the pane and vanishes. Perhaps a distant siding lamp, or the brief skin of water near the track. It is gone before you have fully followed it. Inside, the wheel rhythm remains. It has become more noticeable in this chapter of dry things, as though the train itself has made room for the small sounds of crisp and plate, and the low movement of breath. The maître d' lifts the largest crisp and does not yet bring it to you. He holds it a little above the plate, assessing it by touch alone. You can see the pressure of his thumb through the pad of his glove, less than you can infer it from the steadiness of the piece. He is not testing for freshness. That came earlier, elsewhere. But for service, there is a point at which a crisp should be offered plain, before butter, before trout, before the brighter spread to come. It should be aromatic enough to introduce itself, but not burdened by accompaniment. He lowers it again. The largest is handsome, yes, and sound enough. Yet, in your reclined position, it would ask too much of the first bite. Its bow would make the fracture less certain. It would break less cleanly. He leaves it where it is, not because it is lesser, but because it belongs to a later use, when support will be added and a firmer base required. Instead, he selects the second one. The choice is so slight, you might have missed it in another mood. Here, reclined beneath the blanket, with the napkin spread over your chest, you notice it at once. The second crisp is a touch narrower, more even through its length, less likely to shed crumbs at the first bite. It has taken the compartment warmth more evenly as well. Not cool at the center, not overwarmed at the lampward edge. Dry, aromatic, restrained. Exactly enough. He brings it toward you. The sound it makes is almost nothing. Only the faintest dry movement as his fingers adjust near the edge. Yet, in the compartment, that tiny sound seems complete in itself. You raise your head a little from the cream bolster. The linen across your chest gives a restrained rasp where it shifts against your blanket. The crisp arrives level, not tilted, so the seeds stay where they belong. The first bite is all texture before flavor, a thin resistance, then the clean fracture. Not a crack loud enough to disturb the carriage hush, only a contained break close to your mouth, followed by the dry grain opening under your teeth. The rye is dark and orderly. Caraway comes after, then coriander again, but warmer now, released by the break itself. You taste toasted flour, the faint bitterness at the edge of baked grain, the aromatic seeds giving structure to what would otherwise be too plain. He waits while you finish it. No crumb is allowed to trouble you. He has chosen well. The crisp was sound, and the portion was proper. So what remains is only a little warmth of spice and the dry satisfaction of grain. You settle back again. The pillow receives your weight with that familiar, minute compression at the neck and shoulder. The train keeps its line westward. Somewhere beneath the compartment floor, the rails join and pass, and join again. Their measure translated through mattress and wood into a rhythm too regular to count for long. The plate remains on the tray. The remaining crisps continue to warm by degrees. Their aroma is fuller now, but still restrained. You become aware of how much comfort can live inside such distinctions. Not in abundance, not in display, one thing served at the right moment, then another, each requiring almost nothing from you except the smallest acceptance. He reaches for the next crisp, this time the smallest one that had shifted before. Again, there is that nearly silent porcelain contact as the others settle minutely in its absence. He turns this one once between finger and thumb, enough to judge its edge. A fragment no larger than a crumb loosens and remains on the plate. He pauses. The smallest had already tested him once by moving. Now it tests him again by almost failing. In another service, another room, it might still be used. Here, where the whole course has been narrowed to dryness, soundness, and the discipline of not troubling you, that loosened fragment is enough. The crisp is not unsound exactly, but it is too fragile for what he wants plain rye to demonstrate. It would break too readily, making accident look like texture. He returns it to its place. Instead, he chooses the third in the line. This second offering is set briefly on a side plate, nearer your right hand, not yet raised. He allows another breath of warmth to reach it. The compartment air remains dry enough that the crisp keeps its edge. The lamp gives a little more heat to the upper surface. The underside stays cooler from the porcelain. Such tiny differences would vanish in a dining room. Here, in the reduced climate of the sleeper, they can be felt. He waits until they come level. The wheels below take on a slightly faster pattern. Or perhaps you are hearing them more closely now. The train has entered that part of the journey where movement no longer suggests departure at all. It is simply the condition of the night. The berth sways once, enough to shift the spoon by less than a millimeter against its saucer. Silver touches china with a discreet note, and then is still again. The maître d' glances at that spoon, then at you, and with the side of one finger realigns it. He does not mention the adjustment. He never mentions such things. But the tray has its order, and he keeps restoring it in small acts. The next crisp comes to you. This one is a little broader through the middle, and the seeds are more generous. The aroma rises sooner. When you bite, the caraway is first, then the darker rye, then coriander in a faint citrus line at the back of the palate. The dryness is pleasing in a different way now. It is not only making room, it is measuring room. You do not think this in words so much as receive it as a bodily understanding. The way you know when a pillow has been placed exactly under the neck, or when a blanket has been drawn to the right weight over the knees. He lowers his hand and lets the plate remain where you can see the remaining two lengths in their descending order, now interrupted and remade. The smallest still waits near the lamp side, and the largest, which he did not choose first, lies at the far end with a kind of reserve. That too seems deliberate. He has not forgotten it. He is keeping it for another use, another texture, another topping perhaps. For a little while, neither of you moves much. The compartment breathes by its contained ventilation. The wood gives one faint creak as the carriage settles after a curve. Far down the corridor, something wheeled passes over carpet, and then over a threshold strip with the briefest hush. Perhaps the service trolley returning to some farther car. The sound comes thinly through the door and disappears into the train's larger rhythm. Your eyes lower to the plate again. The crisp surfaces look almost matte under the lamp, except where a seed catches a pinprick of light. You could imagine the cool of storage still lingering in their centers, though their fragrance now says otherwise. They have reached the exact point he wanted. No longer chilled into silence, not yet softened by the room. Between those two conditions, they are at their best. He seems satisfied. You can tell by the way his shoulders ease a fraction, and by the measured breath he takes before setting the plate slightly nearer the middle of the tray. Not close enough to crowd you, only close enough to make the next stage possible. Good, he says, not as praise, but as a notation entered and confirmed. Then he selects the largest crist at last and lays it on the side plate before him, where it will be easier to dress. The smallest remains behind, still neat in line, its earlier shift and near fracture absorbed back into order. His fingertip hovers near the edge of the larger piece, not tapping yet, only waiting over the place where soundness will answer. You watch that finger suspended above the dark rye, above the seeds held fast in the baked surface, and feel the surface narrow toward greater exactness. Beneath the lamp, his hand remains there a moment longer, poised above the crisp for the tap to come. Chapter 6. Cold Butter Rosettes and the Count of 10. Beneath the blanket, your legs feel heavier than before. The cream bolster supports your head with almost no effort from your neck. The apricot has gone. The rye and its seeds remain in a drier, steadier trace. The train continues west through the dark, and on the tray, the plain crisps have made a neat, aromatic path for what will be laid upon them next. The elder maître d' does not return at once. That, too, seems part of his order. Nothing follows too quickly. In the brass reading lamp's amber circle, the porcelain plate of seeded rye sits left of center. The crisps still arranged by size, though one gap now breaks the descending line. Caraway rises first when you breathe in, then coriander after it, warmer now than when the plate was set down. The tray bridge remains level across the berth, firm from edge to edge, and your chest lifts beneath the damask napkin with less effort than before. Beyond the compartment wall, somewhere farther down the carriage, water runs for a brief few seconds in another cabin. It is a contained sound, narrow and practical. Then it stops. The contained ventilation resumes its place in your hearing. A low movement of air that keeps the paper dry warmth even. The wheels under everything continue their measured steel rhythm. Not loud, only persistent enough that your breathing begins to fall into the same spacing. When the latch turns, it does so without hurry. The door opens just far enough for him to enter with what he carries balanced in one hand and steadied in the other. He closes the door behind him with the same economy, and for a moment, the compartment seems to gather itself more closely around the lamp glow. The polished walnut, the pale linen, your reclined shape beneath the blanket. He has brought a chilled dish no larger than a saucer, and on it rest the butter rosettes. Even before he sets them down, the cold of them changes the air nearest your face. Not by much, just enough that you notice a cleaner note beneath the warm smell of rye and wood polish. The rosettes are piped through a fluted nozzle, each one ridged and turned in a tight spiral, their edges precise, as if they have only just left the hand that shaped them. Kühlschrank cold butter, he had said earlier, in that low, professional murmur, as though the carriage refrigerator were not merely storage, but part of the timing of the course, another instrument to be judged correctly. He places the dish on the tray with a porcelain contact so slight it barely disturbs the silver spoon already resting on its saucer. Then he does not move away. You begin to understand that this part matters. The butter cannot be served at once, not in the state it has arrived. It would be too firm, too closed, still carrying the hard chill of storage through its center. Nor can it stand too long in the compartment warmth, where the ridges would lose their shape and the rosette become merely butter again. Correct, perhaps, in flavor, but no longer exact in form. He waits for it to soften. His hand remains near the dish, not touching it. His eyes lower to the rosettes. In the lamp's amber light, the butter has a faint shine along the upper curves, not liquid, not yet yielding, only beginning to acknowledge the room. You do not need to ask what he is measuring. The care of it is plain enough. He counts, though not aloud. 1, perhaps. 2, 3. The count of 10 before softening. A standard so small it might be missed entirely by anyone not devoted to such things. Yet, here, in this walnut veneered sleeper compartment, with the tray fitted berth edge to berth edge across your lap, and the napkins spread over your chest, the standard feels neither excessive nor quaint. It feels right-sized to the hour. The train has reduced the world to objects that can be known by touch, pressure, timing, and temperature. A butter rosette can be worth 10 seconds of thought. Your own work is smaller still. You lie back. You breathe. You let someone else keep time. After a few seconds, the outermost ridge of the nearest rosette changes almost invisibly. Not collapse, not even sagging. Only a slight rounding where before there had been a sharper edge. He sees it at once. His fingers shift by a fraction over the linen. 8, 9, 10. Then a nod so slight it is almost private. He reaches for one of the rye crisps. Not the largest this time, nor the smallest, but one from the middle of the plate. It has warmed enough to release its full aroma, and when he lifts it, the grains catch the lamp glow in tiny, dull points. He does not spread the butter heavily. That would be a breakfast portion, not a tasting one. Instead, He takes a narrow service knife and gathers from the rosette only what the crisp can bear without losing its own dry character. The ridges give under the blade with a resistance that seems to satisfy him. Not brittle, not slack. The butter lands on the rye in one shaped curl, still preserving a little of the fluted pattern where the knife has lifted it. He considers it for a brief instant, then smooths only the base, leaving the crest intact. You watch because there is nothing else to do, and because watching has become its own rest. Each movement arrives complete. No step is revised. No object knocks another out of place. He has the old assurance of someone who has repeated a sequence often enough that it no longer appears as labor. Yet, there is no briskness in him. He serves as if speed would only blur the point. The crisp is brought toward you. You raise your head only a little from the cream bolster. The napkin shifts with your breath. The blanket stays pooled over your legs, warm and steady. He waits at the exact distance where you need not reach, and the butter reaches you first by temperature. Cool, but not refrigerator cold now. The rye follows with its dark grain scent and the fuller spice of caraway. When the crisp touches your mouth, the butter yields at once. Not hard enough to resist the first pressure of your tongue, not soft enough to vanish before the rye has its say. The ridges, which mattered to his eye, matter now to the mouth in another way. They melt at slightly different speeds, so that one small bite gives coolness first, then grain, then the richer spread of butter settling into the caraway and coriander, already warmed by the compartment air. He withdraws the hand that served you, and the bite is left to complete itself. You can feel why he waited. If it had come sooner, your teeth would have met chill resistance, and the rye would have snapped too sharply against it. If later, the butter would have soaked into the crisp and dulled its dry edge. At this moment, the two remain distinct for one breath, perhaps two, before they join. It is not a dramatic difference. It is the kind of difference that belongs to people who have spent years noticing where one state ends and another begins. His voice comes then, low enough that it does not disturb the carriage hush. Better, he says. Not a question, not praise for himself. Simply the correct word for the condition achieved. You find that you agree without needing to think about it. Better than cold from the dish. Better than fully warmed. Better because someone has attended to a transition on your behalf and spared you from receiving it at the wrong point. He prepares another crisp, and this time, before lifting the butter, he lets the knife rest against the rosette for a brief second, as if confirming the softness all over again. The top has grown glossier. The inner folds remain cooler, paler. He takes from that cooler center now, balancing the progression over the course of the dish. The train sways through a long curve, not enough to threaten any object on the tray, only enough that the spoon on its saucer gives the faintest contact, silver against china, and the wood of the compartment answers with a small creak. His hand adjusts automatically, protecting the crisp without looking down. Such corrections seem to happen before thought. Again, the Count lives somewhere behind his eyes. Perhaps he began it anew when the second rosette was exposed to the room. You are too drowsy to decide, and the not deciding is pleasant. Precision can remain his. You receive only the results. The second bite is slightly different. The butter is more fragrant now, less sealed by cold. It spreads over the tongue sooner, carrying a faint sweetness of cream that had been hidden at first. The rye still speaks clearly beneath it, but the balance has shifted by 1 degree toward richness. He notices your slower swallow. The corner of the service knife is wiped on a fold of linen. The dish is turned a few centimeters, so the remaining rosettes face the lamp more evenly. No one has asked him to explain any of this. That seems part of the grace of it. Butter should hold its ridges for 10. Trout mousse should lift cleanly without weeping. A rye crisp should be sound before it is spread. Silver should return to a certain order before dessert. The rules do not crowd the room. They simply shape it. Outside the dark window, your own reflection drifts over blackness and then slips away when some distant light catches the glass. A station lamp, perhaps, or a farm light, too brief to identify. It leaves only the compartment again. Walnut veneer, brass lamp, the pale dish of butter, his sleeve moving carefully above the tray. The world beyond the train has narrowed to flashes. Inside, every object remains available to the eye for as long as you care to rest on it. He chooses not to hurry through the remainder. 1 rosette is left untouched for a while, preserving its firmer state. From another, he serves a little more broadly, enough that the butter reaches nearly to the seeded edges of the crisp. He is testing, perhaps, whether you prefer the cooler center or the more yielding outer fold, the narrower smear or the fuller one. Yet, it never feels like examination, more like memory trying on its possibilities. You notice that your jaw moves more slowly now. The effort of tasting has become very small. Lift the head a little. Accept the offered crisp. Let the mouth do what it knows. Swallow. Settle again. The blanket lies warm over your thighs. 1 foot has relaxed outward under the coverlet, without your noticing when. Your shoulders have sunk another fraction into the berth. The damask over your chest has lost its first coolness and carries your own warmth back to you. He serves 1 final portion from the rosette, whose ridges have just begun to soften past their ideal. Not ruined, merely beyond the exact point he had wanted. Even this he uses with care, taking from the more stable side, making a last proper curl against the rye. There is no wasteful gesture in him, only gradation. A thing may be perfect, then very good, then no longer suited to this purpose. When you take this last buttered crisp, the flavor is rounder, more immediate. The rye gives less resistance. The caraway blooms first. Then the butter follows and smooths its edges. It is perhaps the sleepiest bite so far. less defined than the first, more blended. He seems to know this too, because he does not offer another. He stops there. The dish remains on the tray for a moment longer while he looks at it. Not critically, only with the completeness of someone confirming that the interval has been honored properly. Then he draws it back a little from the center line. Not cleared away yet, simply moved to the place of things finished, but still present. The knife is set down with its blade turned inward. The rye plate is nudged into a new relation beside it, leaving room where the next chilled porcelain may later come to rest. Again, beyond the wall. No water now, only the contained ventilation and the train's steady undersong through Austria. The brass lamp keeps the same amber circle. Your reflection no longer interests you. The berth has become more persuasive than the window. He glances at you once, reading not appetite now, but heaviness. His voice, when it returns, is lower than before. Just so. The words settle into the compartment like another folded piece of linen, not meant to be answered, only to mark that the timing has been kept, the standard met, the course completed at its proper point between chill and surrender. And because he has kept that count for you, you feel your own sense of time loosening. 10 seconds can be enough. A small dish can occupy a whole chapter of the night. Someone else's patience can move through you until your limbs grow heavier, your mouth empties of flavor, and the space left behind is not hunger, but a deeper readiness for whatever comes next. Chapter 7. Smoked trout mousse in a chilled porcelain ramekin. Because he has kept that count for you. The next course arrives without breaking the rhythm. You remain where you are, your head supported by the cream pillow bolsters, the berth blanket drawn to the same comfortable place, the opened damask lying across your chest, with its pressed weight hardly felt now, except where it cools the fabric beneath your throat. The tray bridge still spans from berth edge to berth edge, steady despite the train's faint side-to-side persuasion. And under the brass reading lamp, by now the tray feels familiar. Your eyes rest where something new is placed. The elder maître d' returns, with both hands low and close to the tray, carrying a small saucer, and upon it, a chilled porcelain ramekin. The chilled ramekin cools the air near your face. The compartment has been warm in its contained way, warmed by lamp, by bedding, by your own settled body, by the vent's paper-dry breath. This new thing enters with a refrigerator coolness that belongs to porcelain kept back from the room until its moment. He lowers it near the center line, a little to the right of where the rye plate rests, and the saucer meets the tray with a discreet clink that seems to place a point of white inside all the walnut and amber. Trout, he says, no more than that. You can already see the pale surface in the ramekin, faintly mounded, not glossy, not matte, with the minute grain of something whipped carefully and then allowed to settle into itself. The ramekin's outer wall has a cold bloom on it Not moisture exactly in this dry carriage air, but a look of chill retained. The saucer beneath is colder than the tray. Even from where you lie, you can imagine the feel of it through his fingers. He does not offer it at once. This, too, has its standard. The demi-tasse spoon, which until now has rested near the saucer, in a position so exact you have stopped noticing it, is lifted by the stem of its handle. Silver catches the lamp in a narrow line. He turns the spoon over, not using the bowl but the back of it, and touches that rounded underside to the mousse with a motion so light it barely disturbs the surface. You hear almost nothing. A porcelain contact, finer than the butter dish had made. And then the tiny drag of metal over something airy and cold. He lifts. The mousse rises on the spoon's back in one composed curve. It does not slump. It does not bead at the edge. It keeps its body for the second he asks of it. A man who knows this work does not need to explain what he has confirmed. Still, in his low professional murmur, he gives you the smallest piece of the judgment, as if speaking to the course itself. Cleanly, he says. Good. It is enough that someone has tested the texture before it reaches you. Enough that this pale, cool preparation has been spared the embarrassment of arriving too loose, too warm, too eager to separate. The train continues under you with its distant steel wheel rhythm, and your own part in the matter remains blessedly limited. You need only breathe and then receive. The smell reaches you before the spoon does. Not strong, not the broad smoke of a dining room platter or a breakfast buffet left too long under a cover. This is finer than that, narrower, carried close to the surface. Smoked trout, yes, but gentled by cream, by careful whipping, by perhaps a trace of lemon or white pepper, so restrained that it appears only as brightness at the edge of scent. Rye still gives off its dark grain note from the plate beside it. Caraway and coriander remain in the background. Butter has nearly lost its chill and now smells only faintly of itself. Against these, the trout seems to belong exactly here, at this point in the night, richer than preserve, richer than butter, yet still pale enough to keep the hour from becoming heavy. The maître d' shifts one piece of silver by less than an inch, then another. The movement is so practiced that you notice it not with your eyes first, but with the sense that the tray has become ready in a slightly new way. He chooses a tasting spoon, smaller than one used for soup, larger than the preserve spoon, and with it, he enters the ramekin at the side rather than the top. You watch the spoon cut down and under, lifting a portion that shows the mousse's structure more clearly. Airy, yes, but not foamed into emptiness. It keeps a shape, with the fish finely worked through it. The pale flesh suspended in cream so evenly that no piece insists on itself. He pauses with the spoon above the ramekin for the briefest instant, not for display, but to see whether any excess will fall back. None does. The demi-tasse test has already told him this. yet habit repeats the truth. You begin to understand that standards like these are not merely observed once. They are confirmed at every stage by hands that have done the work long enough to trust repetition more than assumption. When he brings the spoon toward you, you lift only your head. The rest of you remains where it is. Shoulders settled, hips heavy under the blanket, one forearm loose at your side, the napkin spread over your chest in its opened order. That small raising feels luxurious in itself because it is the only effort required. The spoon arrives at the right height without searching. He has learned that much already. Perhaps he knew it sooner than you did. The first taste is colder than the room and softer than it looked. It meets the tongue as a shape and then becomes almost immediately a texture. Not liquid, not paste, but a fine, airy body that yields in layers. Smoke comes second, salt after that. Then the trout itself, delicate and clean beneath the cream, with a firmness of flavor held inside a very light structure. You do not need to think about whether you like it. Your mouth answers by becoming attentive all on its own. The portion is proper. It does not burden the palate. It leaves enough room to notice the finish, which is faintly mineral, faintly sweet from the fish, and touched with something citric that clears the way rather than announcing itself. He has been watching, though not in any intrusive way. A maître d' of his years reads smaller signs than expression. The pause before you lower your head again. The breath through your nose after swallowing. The fact that your mouth opens slightly sooner for the second spoon than it did for the first. These are enough. His reading of your palate, which has been building course by course, now receives confirmation. He says, almost to himself. The second spoonful is turned a fraction toward the side, perhaps because he has seen that you take the taste more comfortably that way when reclined. His service has begun to gather a quality stranger than simple attentiveness. It is not that he anticipates in the ordinary manner of good staff, though he does that too. It is that each small adjustment carries the feeling of being resumed rather than invented. Spoon angle, pause length, the order in which silver is returned to linen, the distance the saucer sits from the rye plate. All of it suggests memory. Outside the dark glass, almost nothing presents itself. The pane has become more mirror than window, and in it, the brass lamp appears as a warm oval, your own outline softened under blanket and napkin. The maître d's sleeve and cuff moving in controlled arcs. Then, for a few moments, the train passes a dark stretch beside water. You do not see the water itself so much as a single wavering reflection, a narrow, unsteady silver line that appears below the level of your face and then slips away. It might be a bank light, caught and broken on the surface. It might be a station lamp seen from farther off. It is enough to suggest water running black beside the rails, while inside the compartment, the Ramekin remains cold, white, contrast deepens your sense of enclosure. Beyond the glass, distance and dark. Here, porcelain, linen, lamp, and the faint coolness of fish mousse lifted by a spoon and brought to you without haste. He offers a third portion, this one slightly smaller, and then reaches with the other hand for one of the seeded rye crisps arranged in descending size. Before he does anything with it, he considers the plate for a moment, choosing not the largest remaining piece and not the smallest. The selected crisp gives the lightest contact sound against the porcelain as he lifts it. Its grain-dark surface catches the lamp in dull points where seeds rise from the baked face. The compartment warmth has fully woken the caraway and coriander by now, and as he breaks off a measured corner, the aroma opens a little further. He does not yet spread anything. That belongs to another course. But he understands proportion. A mere touch of rye may be wanted beside trout, enough to frame the mousse without turning this into a different service. He sets the broken piece near the ramekin, then glances toward you, not asking aloud. You answer by the smallest movement of your chin. The spoon comes once more, followed after a pause by the offered edge of crisp. The order matters. Cream and smoke first, then grain and spice. The rye gives a dry, orderly crack between your teeth, and against that dryness, the mousse seems even more refined. Caraway rises. Coriander follows. The fish remains cool. The room remains warm. You feel the contrast not just in the mouth, but along the roof of it, in the throat, in the way the breath out afterward carries smoke and spice together for a second before the flavors settle. Restrained, exact, appreciative of texture. This is how he has read you. Not by appetite in the obvious sense, not by asking preferences as if taking instructions, but by observing what kind of precision lets your whole body sink further into rest. A sweeter person would have wanted more preserve, perhaps. A hurried one would have taken the crisp too soon. Someone else might have preferred a thicker butter layer, or a larger spoonful, or stronger smoke. But he has been arranging the night around another pattern, and this course confirms it. The ramekin remains on the tray long enough for 2 more tastes, no more. He portions them with the same care as the first, keeping each spoonful clean at the edge. Between one and the next, the spoon touches the saucer with that discreet clink that has become part of the carriage's private music. Wheel rhythm below, ventilation above, wood giving a faint answer on a curve, silver and porcelain speaking only when required. The paper-dry air keeps everything defined. Nothing blurs except your thoughts, and even they do not blur into confusion, only into a broader, slower spacing. At one point, the train leans through a bend, and the lamp's reflection shifts across the window. The mousse in the ramekin does not tremble. The tray bridge remains level. The maître d's hand steadies the saucer, not because it needs rescuing, but because steadiness is part of the service, whether tested or not. You notice his fingers then, older, precise, the skin at the knuckles thinned a little by time, the nails kept short and immaculate. Hands that have carried silver, folded linen, judged sauces, corrected place settings by millimeters. Hands for which this chilled ramekin is not a novelty, but one more exact thing done properly at the proper hour. When the final spoonful has been taken, he does not remove the dish at once. He allows a pause in which the taste can clear and remain. Trout, smoke, cream, rye, a trace of spice. Your head lowers fully again. The bolster receives it without adjustment. The napkin still lies across your chest, and under it, your breathing has lengthened enough that each rise and fall seems to take in the train's motion and return it slower. Then he lifts the spoon, inspects it once in the lamplight, and sets it down in a position that feels not merely tidy, but known. The ramekin follows, raised from its saucer with no scrape at all. The cool spot it leaves behind on the tray is visible only for a moment before the wood regains its even glow. Just so, he says. It might refer to the mousse. It might refer to your receiving of it. It might refer to an older order he is recovering piece by piece from signs too small to name. You do not need to decide. A pale course has passed through the warm compartment and left behind a clearer stillness, a richer kind of ease. Beside the place where the ramekin stood, the rye plate remains. The butter has reached its proper softness some time ago. Silver rests in its measured line. Beyond the dark pane, Austria continues westward, unseen except for the occasional brief silvering. Inside, under the brass lamp, your mouth is cool with smoke and cream. Your limbs are heavier than before, and the elder maître d' already seems to be listening for the next exact thing. Chapter 8. Whipped Liptauer and the quiet tap on the rye crisp. Beside the emptied coolness of the trout, the rye remains in its descending line. By now, each crisp seems to have its turn, and the elder maître d' knows this without needing to consult the plate for long. His hand returns to the tray, not hurried, not delayed, and hovers above the crisps with the same attention he gave the mousse and the butter before it. The brass lamp keeps its amber circle over the walnut veneer, over the silver laid straight, over the opened damask spread across your chest. Beneath all of it, steel on rail, a faint sideward ease, then forward again. He does not speak at once. That, too, has become part of his method. First, he looks. Then he chooses. Only afterward does language enter. And even then, in a low, professional murmur, as though words are another utensil to be used sparingly, his fingers settle near the rye plate. The caraway and coriander have opened further in the compartment warmth, and the dry bread scent has deepened since the plate was first set down. One of the middle crisps is selected. neither the largest nor the smallest. You notice this because his choice feels considered, not random, not merely the next one to hand. Before he lifts it, he checks it. The fingertip tap is nearly inaudible, enough to test whether the crisp has held its structure through the carriage sway and the warm air under the lamp. He will not spread on a piece that has taken on too much air or too little. He will not burden the mouth with a crack that shatters wrongly, nor risk a softness at the center. The crisp must still be sound. It does. You watch only as much as drowsiness allows. More and more, the service comes to you through fragments. The gleam of his cuff at the wrist, the pale rim of porcelain. The rest is understood by sequence. You do not need to sit higher. You do not need to reach. The berth, the blanket over your legs, the pillow bolsters at your back, the linen over your chest, all remain as they were. He works within that arrangement so completely that your stillness has become part of the service. From the tray, he brings forward the dish of whipped Liptauer. Its color is the first to change. After the pale trout and the white butter, this has a warmer body to it, a muted coral brightened with paprika. The scent rises only a little in the dry compartment air. Cheese first, then paprika, then a slight mustard edge that keeps richness from settling too heavily. He sets the dish nearer the chosen crisp and takes up a small spreading knife. Even this motion has been prepared by the earlier chapters of the night. You know the silver now by where it lies, and how it sounds when lifted from china. You know the difference between spoon and knife by the weight of the clink. You know the brief linen muted contact when he shifts one handle by a finger's width, a change in track joint, a curve that gives one restrained wood creak from the compartment wall, the contained ventilation moving dry warmth over your face. All of it enters the same field of attention as the knife poised over the dish. He draws up a portion no larger than proper tasting requires. The knife slips into the whipped cheese with almost no resistance. Its body is lighter than butter, denser than mousse, and when he lifts it, you can see the ridges from the knife's edge hold for a moment before settling. Paprika gives the surface a faint matte bloom. Then he spreads. The drag of the knife across the rye is one of the smallest sounds of the night, but exact enough that you hear the grain of the crisp answer under the smoothness of the Liptauer. Not a scrape, not a smear. A measured laying on, from one end toward the other, leaving a margin at the edge so your first bite will not press the filling out beyond the bread. He keeps the thickness even. Too much and the rye would disappear. Too little and the paprika would not bloom fully against the caraway and coriander already warmed from the plate. You have the curious feeling that he is not deciding this for the first time. The thought comes and settles without effort. Earlier in the evening, it was only attentiveness, the sort of old-school exactitude one might hope for and rarely receive. But now, there is something more specific in the order and proportion. the middle crisp, the amount of spread, the fact that the fuller savory follows the trout and not before it. None of it is explained. None of it needs to be. You sense, as one senses the right side of a pillow in the dark, that he is serving according to a pattern he has recognized. A little Liptauer, he says at last. The words are low and even, touched by age and practice. He does not name the paprika or the mustard. He assumes the bite will say that for itself. He does not ask if you would like it. It has already been judged suitable. Far down the corridor, a soft knock touches another compartment door. Just once, then again after a pause. The sound comes through carpet, wood, and distance, so faintly that it seems hardly more than a memory of sound. No answer follows. The carriage absorbs it. He lifts the prepared crisp. Your head need rise only slightly from the cream bolster. The napkin remains spread over your chest, its starched body now warmed by your breathing. The blanket still covers your legs. One hand stays where it has rested, loose under the edge of the tray bridge. This economy of movement has become one of the deepest luxuries of the night. Taste arriving to you while the rest of you remains arranged for sleep. The crisp reaches your mouth. First comes the dry seeded grain, the clean break of rye giving way under the teeth with just enough resistance to mark the bite. Then the Liptauer opens. Paprika arrives not as heat, but as breadth, a red warmth across the tongue. The cheese beneath it is whipped to lightness, but still substantial enough to carry flavor. Then, after that first rounded impression, the mustard appears exactly where it should. Not strong, not vinegary, only a narrow, bright line that lifts the whole thing and keeps it from becoming heavy. Caraway from the crisp rises through it. Coriander follows more faintly, aromatic rather than assertive. The butter from earlier has prepared the palate for richness. The trout has prepared it for delicacy. This comes between those registers, joining them. You feel it before you think it. The bite is proportioned with the assurance of memory. The notion does not sharpen into any question. It simply makes the tray feel more intimate. You are being served as though he already knows how this should go. He waits while you finish the bite. That waiting is never empty with him. He uses it to observe in the gentlest way your swallow, the pace at which you receive the aftertaste, whether your mouth rests closed for a moment afterward or parts for breath. He notices enough to continue correctly, not enough to intrude. The knife returns to the dish. Again he portions. Again his finger chooses from the rye line. And again the crisp is tested by that nearly silent tap. This time you hear the answer more clearly. Perhaps because your own hearing has adjusted to his scale. Dry, sound, suitable. The spread goes on in the same measured thickness, though perhaps a fraction narrower, as if he has judged that the second bite should be a shade lighter than the first. The compartment gives a mild sway. Outside, the darkened glass offers a brief silvered reflection. Lamp, sleeve, your own cheek turned slightly toward the tray, and then returns to black. He offers the second piece. This one you take more slowly. The paprika seems rounder now that the tongue expects it. The mustard appears earlier, then recedes. The rye, warmed for this long under the brass lamp, releases more of its coriander at the finish. You notice the texture as much as the flavor. The spread yielding immediately. The crisp maintaining its line until the last pressure of the bite. No burden in it anywhere. He was exact about that. You find yourself appreciating how little remains to be done after each bite. No need to steady a plate. No crumbs falling beyond the napkin. No searching for water. No reaching for a second utensil. He has built each stage to conclude neatly. That, too, has a sedative quality. The mind does not have to keep track of unfinished things. When the second crisp is gone, he lowers the knife and studies the tray for a brief moment, not assessing whether the course succeeded. That is already known. Rather, he seems to be placing this result among the others. Apricot accepted in silence. Butter at the correct softness. Trout received with that small pause after smoke. Liptauer in the middle order. At this thickness, on this size of rye, a sequence is being confirmed. His hand moves one piece of silver by a few millimeters. The change is minute, but your eye catches it, because by now the tray has become legible to you. A spoon line is maintained. A saucer is turned a touch more square to the berth. The Liptauer dish is set back, not removed. The remaining rye waits in its diminishing arrangement, and the butter, now fully at peace with the compartment warmth, keeps its fluted shape only in softened outline. He says, almost to himself, and yet for you to hear, yes, no more than that. The word is not triumphant. It is the sound of an old standard meeting itself again after some time. In it, there is satisfaction, but of a restrained kind. The satisfaction of a place setting aligned, of a sauce at proper nap, of a remembered order restored, without making a display of memory. Your head settles deeper into the bolster once he has drawn his hand away. The place where you lifted to meet the bites eases back. The napkin lies lightly over your chest. Under the blanket, your legs have grown heavier, your feet warm. The brass lamp keeps the tray in a modest pool of amber, while beyond it, the compartment corners recede into brown wood and shadow. The wheel rhythm continues under everything, regular enough now that your breathing has begun to follow its spacing without instruction. He remains near for another moment, attending to nothing visible. Perhaps listening to the carriage. Perhaps listening to your pace. Perhaps deciding what should come next and when. You do not need to know. It is enough to feel that the next course, whatever it is, will emerge from the same exact care, from the same old knowledge of sequence. On the tray, the plate now shows what he's chosen. The Liptauer rests in its dish, with one smooth crescent removed. The silver lies in order. Far down the corridor, no further knock comes. train proceeds west through the dark, and in the amber circle before you, the elder maître d' has confirmed something he has been quietly reading all night. Chapter 9. The candied violet left as a small clue on the tray. The maître d' reaches into the inner pocket of his jacket and brings out a small paper twist. He does not present it. He does not name it. He lays it on the tray with the same measured hand he has used for silver and porcelain all evening, but not among them. Slightly above the spoon line, just beyond the direct order of service, the paper twist comes to rest. Its placement is exact enough to be deliberate and casual enough to avoid announcement. White paper turned at both ends, a shape no larger than the top joint of your thumb. Then his hand withdraws. You notice it at once, and something in you answers before thought does. Not surprise exactly, recognition, as if some older part of you has seen the placement and understood that it means to be seen. The maître d' sees that your eyes have found it. He lowers his own to the tray, as though the observation were his alone. Later, he says, it is not instruction. It is not refusal. It places the thing in time, and the time he gives it is not yet. You let your head sink back another fraction into the bolster. The motion is small, but you feel it all along the back of your neck, where the muscles release from their brief work of lifting. The tray remains steady over you, berth edge to berth edge, balanced so precisely that even with the train's faint sway, nothing slides. Yet the steadiness has altered. The little white twist above the spoon line means the tray now feels deliberate in a new way. A pale reflection moves across the window and is gone. Perhaps a signal lamp. Perhaps the lit edge of a passing platform, too minor to name. It glances over the walnut veneer and catches for an instant in the bowl of the spoon. Then the compartment returns to amber and brown and cream. The paper twist remains where it was set. Without hurrying, the maître d' attends to the remnants of the savory service. The ramekin of smoked trout mousse, nearly but not entirely empty, is lifted from its saucer. The saucer itself remains. He seems to know that its white circle still belongs in the composition for another minute, though the mousse no longer does. The preserve dish is moved farther left, not away, merely retired from prominence. The rye plate stays near your right hand, because one crisp, perhaps two, may yet have a role before the sweet courses begin. The silver is not reset, not yet, but eased into a quieter relation with what remains. You begin to understand that the candied violet has not been placed as a sweetmeat alone. In the order of the crisps, in the spoonful of marille preserve from the Danube Valley, taken without surprise. In the pause after the trout. In the proper tasting portion of whipped Liptauer, brightened with paprika and a trace of mustard. Spread only after the fingertip tap had confirmed the rye crisp's soundness. tiny acceptances, tiny delays. The angle of your mouth when the spoon approached. He has taken these in, not with curiosity, but with the composure of a man restoring a sequence he suspects you once knew. And now, he is testing something more exact. Not whether you like sweetness, whether you know why it has been placed there, whether noticing it tells him that the old order is not entirely lost on you. You look at it again. The paper is not glossy, but matte, folded with economy, turned at the ends by practiced fingers. Through the thinnest seam where the fold overlaps, a dusting of sugar has caught the light. Not much, just enough to show itself when the train sways and the lamp's reflection shifts. Violet sugar has a grayed bloom to it, darker and duller than pink, with none of ribbon lavender's brightness. Here it lies, almost hidden in white. The maître d' notices where your gaze rests. A small clue, he says, and then, with the faintest smile touching the old-world precision of his mouth, if one cares about provenance. The phrase carries more than classification. The suggestion that origins matter, that order matters, that one may still belong to a vanished etiquette if one can read what has been left in plain sight. You feel the answer in yourself before you shape any of it into words. The chapter of the night has turned away from explanation. Meaning now is carried by where things are set down and by what is not yet touched. He takes up the spoon and sets it down again, a little higher on the napkin-lined tray, restoring the line beneath the paper twist more distinctly. It is such a slight rearrangement, yet the tray alters under it. Not visibly transformed, only tuned. You feel the rightness of it before you could describe what changed, and at the same time, feel that he has seen you feel it. The corridor offers another tiny proof of the hour. A distant service trolley hush, so far off that it reaches you more as a change in the carriage's texture than as sound. Wheels over carpet runner, perhaps, then over the metal threshold between cars. Then nothing. The contained ventilation continues above you, drying the air just enough that the scent of rye and smoked fish has receded, leaving a cleaner space in which sugar can eventually appear. Your mouth has already begun to anticipate that change, though drowsily. Not hunger now, more like readiness for a different register. The savory courses have occupied the front of the tongue, the sides, the grain of the palate. What waits next belongs to another part of tasting. The coolness after spice. The faint perfume that reaches the nose before the mouth. The way sugar can be made light if it is used with restraint. The maître d' does not untwist the paper. He leaves the violet concealed. That concealment becomes part of the pleasure. To know what a thing is and not yet have it. To see where it has been placed and understand that placement matters. Your thoughts do not proceed in straight lines now. They arrive in little illuminated sections, then dim again. The tray is one section, the window another. The pressure of the blanket over your shins another still. Between them runs the train's low, even rhythm, joining each separate noticing into one continuous passage. The brass lamp warms the top edge of the paper twist. The lower side remains in shade. The effect is not dramatic. It simply gives the small object volume, enough that it seems almost to breathe with the carriage sway, though, of course, it does not move. The silver beneath it catches and releases the same amber note at regular intervals as the train leans and rights itself. The maître d' folds the used tasting cloth once, then again, making a narrow rectangle. He places it near the preserve dish with exact corners. This, too, seems to belong to an older code. Signs of completion kept visible until the next service formally begins. Nothing whisked away in haste. Nothing left in disarray. You find yourself soothed by these continuities, more than by flavor itself now. The sequence has become a surface you can rest your mind upon. At last, he lifts the paper twist, not to open it, but to move it half an inch farther upward, preserving its position above the spoon line while clearing a little more room below. The gesture confirms what you had already sensed. The violet is not accidental garnish. When he sets it down again, the sugar seam flashes once. "Better there," he murmurs. You could almost smile, though the expression hardly reaches your mouth. Better there. Not because of decoration, because the order asks for it. Because a seasoned hand sees where the next piece of silver will need to fall. Because he is still watching to see what you recognize without being told. Your eyelids lower and rise more slowly. The compartment has narrowed further. The walnut veneered sleeper compartment. The cream bolsters. The tray over your lap. The paper twist above the spoon line. These are enough. Outside, some river-dark stretch may be passing. Some town asleep behind shuttered windows. Some station lamp burning over a near-empty platform. But the pane gives back mostly your own enclosed world. And that world has become complete in miniature. The maître d' inclines his head, not as farewell, only as acknowledgement that this pause has done its work. Then he gathers one dish, leaves another, and stands for a moment with his hands resting lightly at the tray's edge, considering the next arrangement before he makes it. The candied violet remains untouched in its white paper twist. A sweetness deferred, a clue left in plain sight. And under the lamp, with the train carrying you steadily west, you let your attention rest there too, on the not yet, on the exactness of its place, on the fact that he has placed it for you to read, and you have read it. Chapter 10. Silver reset for dessert, in the order a regular would expect. His hand is already moving the spoon when your attention returns fully to the tray. Not lifting it, not yet, only drawing the handle through a fraction of space with a touch so assured it seems less adjustment than disclosure. The silver gives a dry, fine note against the linen beneath, and at once the tray begins to look ready for dessert. The violet remains above the spoon line in its small paper twist, neither forgotten nor offered. But now everything around it begins to confess what it has been waiting to become. You lie beneath the blanket with the opened damask across your chest. The tray bridge steady from berth edge to berth edge, your head supported by the cream bolsters. The lamp's amber circle holds linen, silver, porcelain, polished wood. Beneath all of it, the train moves west with such even rhythm that your breathing has long since taken its measure from the rails. For a little while, nothing new is brought. Then this. The elder maître d' has decided the next order of the night. He turns the spoon by less than an inch. The bowl angles inward. The handle comes to rest where a hand reaching later without thought would find it cleanly, gratefully, as if it had always belonged there, not a lesson, not a rule recalled. Something lower and quicker than that. A small settling in the body, as immediate as a pillow turned to its cool side. The fork comes next, though you had not been thinking of a fork until his fingers touch it. It has waited nearly invisible against the tray's orderliness, and now he draws it forward by millimeters, then back by one. The times align with the spoon's stem, not too close. There is a spacing your hand understands at once. The folded linen beneath gives just enough to keep each movement from sounding sharp. You hear the faint rustle of cloth, then the tiny click as the fork settles. In another room, under brighter light, the act would scarcely exist. Here, it lands in you with the force of recognition. He lifts one saucer and sets it down again in a new relation to the plate that had supported the chilled Ramekin earlier. The Ramekin is gone now. The richer, savory coolness has passed. The dish that held the Liptauer has been removed as well. What remains has air around it. He makes that air deliberate. A sweet course cannot enter the same arrangement that held paprika and trout and rye. Something must be cleared. And he clears it, not with flourish, but with exact intervals, restoring distances. You do not follow each step so much as receive it. The blanket lies warm over your legs. The damask across your chest has lost the first chill it carried when opened from its bishop's hat fold, and has taken your temperature. Its pressed pattern only a slight relief beneath your resting fingertips. You need lift your chin only a little to see the tray. Even that becomes unnecessary. He works within the edge of your lowered gaze, and your attention drifts between object and cadence, between the spoon's new angle and the wheel rhythm under the floor. He removes a dish you had stopped noticing. Porcelain leaves the tray with almost no sound, his fingers taking the rim at balanced points. A little cooler air touches the place where it had stood. Then another saucer comes in, warmer than the one removed, though not warm enough to announce itself by steam or scent. It is simply ready. He places it to the right, then shifts it left by the width of a fingernail. "There we are," he murmurs, in the tone of a man confirming a setting rather than addressing a person, though the words reach you as both. The phrase is ordinary enough, yet it goes through you with a strange brightness, Not because of what it says, but because of what it assumes. There is no asking in it, no testing. You feel that knowledge gathering before thought can catch it. The spoon had belonged to preserve, then to mousse, then to the measured transitions of the savory service. Now it belongs elsewhere. Its handle no longer points where it did. It rests where your fingers, even half asleep, would close around it without searching. He has read that from you already, perhaps from the side on which your head is raised, perhaps from the pace at which you accepted the narrow silver preserve spoon, perhaps from the way your eyes had gone first, not to the center of the tray, but to the upper margin where the violet lay. Again, the carriage gives a low, timbered complaint as the train enters a broad curve. The brass reading lamp throws a firmer gleam along the spoon's edge, and then relaxes as the sway evens out. In the darkened window, you catch a brief silvered reflection of the tray itself, duplicated and dimmer, floating over the black outside. Then that slips away. Beyond the glass, there may be a station passed without your noticing, or a river-dark stretch, or fields flattened under moonless sky inside the walnut-veneered sleeper compartment. The tray is all that matters now. He opens the paper twist at last, though not fully, just enough to confirm what it contains. Just enough to let the candied violet exist no longer as promise alone, but as part of the sequence now being assembled. The paper gives a crisp, restrained crackle. He does not offer it yet. He places it back above the spoon line, but a little nearer the plate's future position. The shift is modest. Its effect is not. A folded section of linen is turned over once, then smoothed. Not the napkin across your chest. That remains undisturbed, but a smaller service cloth beneath one of the pieces on the tray. He uses it to mute contact, to absorb the least vibration of porcelain on wood. You hear the folded linen rustle, then his thumb pressing out a tiny ridge so the saucer sits perfectly level. Such work would be invisible to anyone impatient. Tonight, it enters you as calm, so exact, it almost startles. The spoon nearest, the fork at a modest remove, the saucer not centered, but companionably offset. A dessert plate's place held open in advance. It is not that you admire the etiquette of it. Admiration would be too distant. This is closer, more intimate. The relief of finding that the next motion has already been prepared for you, that no hesitation will be required, that sweetness after midnight may arrive without asking your hand to learn anything new. He pauses to inspect the line from your side rather than his own. That, more than any polished rule, reveals the truth of the reset. He leans just enough to see the tray as you see it from the berth, from beneath the lamp. From this angle where the cream bolsters lift your head and the blanket keeps your limbs heavy. Then he makes one final alteration, turning the fork by a degree so slight the movement is almost imagined. Yet, after it, the arrangement clicks into place, as unmistakably as if a crease had been smoothed from the sheet beneath your shoulder. The distant announcement that had once crossed the carriage does not repeat. Instead, there is only the train's patient iron measure, wheel after wheel under the floor. And from far down the corridor, the softest passing hush of someone moving a trolley over carpet and threshold strips. It fades before it reaches your door. The elder maitre d' remains within the compartment's amber pool, his cuffs pale at the wrists, his manner unchanged. If he takes satisfaction in the completed reset, it appears only as a fractional lessening of movement. A hand resting for a second beside the tray before withdrawing. You let your eyes half close and open again. The silver has become brighter against the deepening hour, not because the lamp has changed, but because the tray around it has been cleared to receive the last course. The savory notes have receded. In their place is expectancy, but not the kind that sharpens. This one lowers you further into the berth. It loosens thought from explanation. It leaves only the felt certainty that the arrangement is correct, meant for you. Then he brings the plate that belongs to this new order and settles it into the place he prepared, with no need now to adjust anything further. Porcelain meets saucer with a discreet clink, softened at once by linen and hand. He does not yet reveal the dessert itself in full. The service still values transition. Chapter 11. Sachertorte with unsweetened Schlagobers after midnight. The tray has already been corrected into its dessert order before you fully notice. By now, your attention rests only on the plate. The elder maitre d' stands beside the berth with that same economy of movement that has governed the whole night. By now, his presence reaches you first through materials disturbed in the smallest degree. The dry slip of linen against linen, the subdued contact of saucer on wood, the briefest displacement of the compartment's warm air when his sleeve passes near the lamp. When he speaks, it is in the low register he has kept all evening. After midnight, he says, and the words are not an announcement so much as a measure. They tell you where in the night you have arrived. He sets down the plate. The square of Sachertorte is modest, exactly right for this hour. It is not the broad cafe wedge of afternoon service, not a display of abundance, but a neatly cut portion intended to be received while reclining, beneath a blanket, with no need for appetite to prove itself. The glaze on top catches the brass light with a muted shine. Along the cut side, the crumb shows its close grain, almost black-brown in the dimness, with the thin seam of apricot laid between layers so precisely that it reads first as a darker line, and only then as fruit. A spoonful of unsweetened Schlagobers has been placed against one edge, not perched high, not decorative, but settled there with purpose. The cream has softened under the compartment warmth. Its ridges from the serving spoon have softened just enough to lose sharpness. Where it touches the cake, a pale crescent has already yielded, and the chocolate glaze has dulled under that contact, not cold cream dropped abruptly onto firm cake. Not a contrast that wakes the mouth too much, but cream allowed a moment to meet the chocolate and lower it into something gentler. You watch him make one small adjustment with the spoon. He does not cut at once. He turns the plate by a few degrees, considering the angle from your bolster, the line of your sight, the effort required if you raise your head only slightly to receive the bite. Then, with the side of the dessert spoon, he presses through the top glaze. There is the faintest resistance first, a delicate shell giving way, then the deeper surrender of cake beneath. The sound is almost nothing, only a dry little break at the surface, followed by the hush of spoon through crumb. He pauses there, not for ceremony, but for texture. You have learned his pauses now. The spoon gathers a proper first portion. A little of the glaze, enough crumb to show the cake's density without making it heavy. The thinnest trace of apricot from the center seam, and some of the unsweetened cream drawn over the top, so that the whole mouthful is already balanced before it leaves the plate. He does not overload the spoon. He never has. Even at the richest point of the tasting, he has measured each offering for the ease of receiving it half reclined, beneath the opened damask spread over your chest. Just so, he murmurs, though perhaps he says it to the spoon rather than to you. You lift your head a little from the bolster. The movement is smaller than it would have been at the start of the evening. You have settled more deeply into the berth since then. Your neck yields less from effort and more from habit, knowing the distance now between pillow and silver. The napkin across your chest makes a dry, pressed sound as your breathing changes. Then the spoon arrives. The first taste is darker than sweetness. Chocolate comes first in its proper gravity. Not bright, not sugary, but deep and level, with that restrained bitterness that belongs to good late-hour dessert. Then the apricot appears, not as jamminess, but as a narrow thread of fruit acidity running through the cake. Enough to keep the chocolate from closing entirely. The unsweetened Schlagobers meets both and lowers them. Its coolness is plain, almost milk-like at first, then richer as it warms on the tongue. Because it carries no sugar of its own, it does not compete. It opens space. It lets the chocolate become rounder, the apricot quieter, the whole bite less like dessert in the bright sense, and more like a final settling of flavors already known. You do not need to think this through in words. The mouth understands before the mind does. You feel it in the way your jaw loosens after the bite is taken, in the slower swallow, in the breath that follows with a little more weight in it. The cake does not sharpen you. It lowers you another degree into the pillow. Outside, Austria continues in darkness beyond the pane. But by now, the window has become mostly interior. The brass lamp reflects there in an oval glow. The pale shape of the cream appears once in the glass and disappears as the carriage shifts. For a moment, a distant light from somewhere beyond the line slips across the pane, and makes a silver bar on the walnut veneer. Then it is gone. You do not look after it. The compartment has become sufficient in its own scale. Plate, spoon, lamp, blanket. The measured nearness of the man serving you. He prepares the next bite with the same exactness. Here, the judgments are more yielding. He watches how the cream relaxes against the cake. He notes how much pressure the spoon may use before the crumb compacts. He turns the plate once more so the seam of apricot can be taken at the right interval, neither first nor last. The fork remains present, but unused, exactly where it belongs in this order. That, too, seems part of the old correctness he has been reconstructing all night. Not every piece of silver must be employed to justify its place. A subtle wood creak passes through the compartment as the train takes a curve. The tray bridge answers with the tiniest settling sound against its supports, still firm from berth edge to berth edge. The plate shifts no more than a breath's width under his fingers. His hand accommodates the motion before it can become movement. You notice this not as skill displayed, but as comfort preserved. Nothing on the tray startles. Nothing skids, rattles, or asks to be rescued. The second spoonful carries more cream. By now, the unsweetened Schlagobers has softened further and begun to meld with the top layer of glaze. The spoon passes through a portion where chocolate and cream have already met for a few moments, and the result is silkier, less distinct at the edges. The coolness is reduced. The bitterness has gentled. The apricot, touched only lightly this time, appears farther back in the mouth, as if from memory. You receive it with even less effort than the first. He sees this. Not the flavor itself, of course, but the signs by which he has read the whole evening. The fractionally slower lift of your head, the way you leave it resting back sooner after the spoon departs, the slight parting of your lips before the next bite is fully offered. His service changes accordingly. The intervals lengthen. He gives you time enough not to evaluate, but simply to have tasted. The candied violet remains where he left it, above the spoon line in its paper twist. In the lamp's amber circle, it has become almost part of the tray's pattern, a small folded shape among silver and porcelain. You think of it once, not with curiosity now, but with recognition. It belongs to the sweetness of this end hour, whether or not it is unwrapped. After another pause, he takes up the paper twist. The movement is so slight that at first you register only the dry crackle of the folded paper between his fingers. He opens it above the plate, not over the napkin, not over the wood, and tips the candied violet into his palm. The sugar catches the light in a faint dusting over the dark purple petals. It is smaller than memory would make it. Such things often are at this hour. For after, he says. He does not place it in your mouth. He sets it on the edge of the dessert plate, where a little cool cream remains clear of chocolate. The old game of preference and provenance is not explained even now. It does not need to be. You understand enough in the arrangement itself that he has remembered or inferred that this belongs near the end, that violet after chocolate is not for everyone, that he serves it because some trace in your responses has told him it is right to do so. The next spoonful includes the smallest touch of the violet's sugared edge, pressed into cream before the spoon is raised. The effect is nearly nothing, which is why it matters. A floral note appears and vanishes quickly, less a flavor than a change in the air above the cream. A brief, cool perfume meeting chocolate's depth. Then the apricot seam returns, and the whole bite closes in a way the earlier ones did not, with a faint upward note before settling down again. You feel the train more than the room now. Your breathing has fallen into that measure without instruction. The blanket lies warmer over your shins than it did an hour ago. One shoulder has sunk farther into the mattress. The small of your back has found the berth's exact give. Even your hands, resting idle at either side of the napkin, seem heavier in their own stillness, as though the work of receiving has nearly replaced the work of being awake. He serves the last of the cake in 2 reduced portions rather than 1. This is the same intelligence that has shaped the whole tasting, an understanding that the end of a course should taper. The spoonfuls grow smaller as your alertness does. The last sweetness comes in diminishing measures, each one easier than the last. Chocolate, apricot, cream. Chocolate, cream, the faintest violet. Then only cream, carrying a dark trace from the plate. Between these offerings, a muted vibration passes through the carriage as the train crosses a junction or bridge seam, enough to alter the rhythm for a few seconds before the smoother run resumes. Somewhere farther down the corridor, a latch clicks once, and then is still. The contained ventilation continues its low thread above the berth. The brass lamp keeps its steady pool of amber on the tray and leaves the corners of the compartment in a deeper brown. At last, the plate shows only a sheen of glaze, a crescent of cream nearly dissolved, and 1 or 2 dark crumbs where the spoon has been exact but not fussy. He does not scrape them. He knows the point at which completion becomes over-attention. Instead, he lays the spoon down on the saucer in the place already prepared for it, and the silver makes 1 discreet note against china. You swallow the last taste and do not immediately open your eyes fully. Chocolate remains as warmth, more than flavor now. The apricot has receded to a brightness so small it might be only memory. The cream has done its work thoroughly. It has taken the edge from sweetness and left behind something plainer, more restful, almost domestic in its simplicity. Beside you, the elder maître d' stands for a moment in the practiced stillness that follows proper service, not waiting for praise, not searching your face, simply confirming by the cadence of your breathing and the settled angle of your head that the course has ended where it should. When he speaks again, His voice is lower than before. "Yes," he says. Then his hand moves to the plate, the saucer, the paper twist now emptied of violet, and the tray remains arranged for a few breaths longer beneath the lamp, while the train carries you west through the dark. The sweetness reduced to comfort, the comfort already beginning to pass into sleep. Chapter 12. Drifting to sleep as the night train continues west through Austria. For a few breaths more, the plate remains where he has left it, marked only by a dark sheen of glaze, a soft crescent of unsweetened cream, and a few exact crumbs. The emptied paper twist, now only a small white crease above the spoon line in the amber light. You do not need another taste. That has already been understood. What remains is only the clearing away. The elder maître d' stands beside the berth with the same economy he has used all night, not withdrawing too quickly, not disturbing the shape into which the compartment has settled around you. The train moves under everything with that deeper after-midnight steadiness, the steel wheels joining into a long, even measure that passes through the mattress and up into your back. Your head has grown heavier against the cream pillow bolsters. The blanket lies warm over your legs and hips. He reaches first for the fork. Even that is nearly more motion than the compartment requires. 2 fingers, a slight lift, a pause so brief it is felt more than seen. Then the fork is set onto the saucer he has kept ready for the used silver. A tiny contact of metal on china, no sharper than a bead touching porcelain. Then the spoon follows. The dessert plate comes next, steadied from beneath so that the last of the Schlagobers does not slide. You notice, drowsily, that he turns the plate a fraction as he lifts it, so the tray never feels abruptly emptied. The bridged tray is not yet removed. First, he lightens your chest. His hands come to the damask with the same care that opened it. One edge is raised, folded inward, then the other, and the weight leaves you by degrees, rather than all at once. As it lifts away, you feel the air of the compartment touch your shirt front again, dry from the vent, faintly warm, carrying a trace of polished wood and cooled porcelain. The body notices the difference at once. The chest rises under less weight. The throat loosens. Your jaw has unclenched without your noticing when. The cooler air on your chest is noticeable. He folds the napkin not back into ceremony, but into usefulness. Once, twice, a narrowing of white. The bishop's hat belongs to the beginning of service. This late hour asks for something simpler. The folded linen joins the saucer and plate in his left hand. Still, the tray bridge remains in place across the berth, spanning from edge to edge, its polished wood catching the lamp in one long, muted line. Beyond the compartment wall, somewhere farther down the carriage, a latch touches home with a padded click. Then, the corridor gives nothing more. The carpet keeps footfalls from carrying. The contained ventilation continues in its low, even breath. A faint wood creak answers as the train enters a curve, and the brass reading lamp throws a slightly altered angle across the walnut veneer before settling back again. The ending comes through clearing away. At last, he places one hand at either side of the tray bridge. The removal is so measured that you feel the intention before the weight changes. A slight upward pressure, enough to free the fitted ends from berth edge to berth edge. Then, a level drawing back toward him. The wood does not scrape. Porcelain does not answer. The bridge leaves the space above your blanket, and the berth becomes only a berth again, though not quite the same one as before. The body notices the difference at once. More room above the ribs, less structure near the elbows, the ordinary breadth of lying down restored. He steps back with the tray and the gathered service, and for a moment, the compartment seems larger. Not because anything has changed in its dimensions, but because the horizontal line across you has gone. Your eyes, if they open at all, find the brass lamp, the walnut panel, the darkened window with its occasional silvered reflection sliding over the glass and away again. Somewhere beyond that pane, Austria continues westward in fields, river dark stretches, embankments, sleeping towns, stations reduced to 1 or 2 lamps, and a platform edge. You do not need to see any of it clearly. The motion tells you enough. The maître d' sets the tray down just beyond your sight, perhaps on the corridor sideboard, perhaps on the service trolley farther off. You hear only the faintest sequence: wood meeting a stable surface, a saucer lowered, silver nested together. He has spent the whole night arranging each object so that it arrives without effort from you. Now he arranges their departure with the same discipline. Nothing is left behind that would ask for your attention. When he returns to the doorway, his presence reaches you before his outline does. Cloth moving against cloth. A hand on the latch. Then a murmur, so low the words do not separate, only a contour of sound, intimate enough to seem meant for you alone, and already fading as you try to catch it. Perhaps a good night, reduced almost past language. Perhaps your name. Perhaps only the old cadence of service, worn smooth by years in dining cars and old hotels, where late attentions are completed in halftones, and the guest is never brought fully back to alertness. You almost have it and lose it. The door eases inward and then back into place. That small corridor seam closes, and with it, the last public line of the compartment. Not silence exactly. Rather, the particular sleeper car hush that has accompanied you since the Wien Hbf departure. Hush gave way to the pane-dark calm of the train. Wheels underfloor, vent air, the occasional shifting answer from wood and fittings as the carriage sways. Without the service between you and the room, these sounds come nearer to the body. The mattress receives more of your weight. The cream pillow bolsters support the head with a firmness that has softened during the night. One shoulder settles lower. A hand, no longer near silver or linen, rests where it falls. You become aware of the blanket in sections. Its weight lies most clearly over the shins first, then across the knees, then broad over the thighs and lower belly, where the carriage warmth has collected beneath it. The fabric near your chest is lighter, and where the napkin had been, there is now only your own warmth held in the shirt and skin. The small of your back finds the berth more completely. The neck gives another fraction into the pillow. None of this needs adjusting. It simply happens as the train continues. Outside, a brief wash of station light crosses the window and the opposite wall, pale and gone almost before you have noticed it. A sign, perhaps, a platform lamp. The silvered reflection of the compartment returns, then darkens again. Your attention no longer follows them far. The interior has become sufficient in itself. Brass glow, walnut grain, cream fabric, the dry, warmed air, the measured vibration beneath the berth. That knowledge does not sharpen you. It lets you sink further. The train's rhythm has become long enough now that you cannot easily tell one rail joint from the next. Instead, there is a broad undercurrent. At intervals, the carriage gives its slight sideward persuasion, enough to shift the pressure along your shoulder blade or hip, then returns. The wood answers once in a low creak. Far away, another door closes with care. The corridor quiet seals itself again. The taste memory of apricot comes back for a moment. Not as flavor exactly, but as color behind the eyes. A darker gold, cooked down, restrained. Then rye, dry and aromatic. Then the cool body of trout mousse. Then paprika. Then chocolate. None of these stay long enough to wake you. They pass through like the lights outside the window, touching and gone. Your face has gone slack with sleep's first honesty. The tongue rests. The eyes no longer need to open. Breath enters, leaves, enters again. Paced now less by intention than by the train itself. In the berth's narrow width, you feel precisely contained. Shoulder, flank, calf, heel. The pillow has taken the shape of your head. The blanket has settled around your feet. Somewhere beyond your door, the elder maître d' will be finishing his own minute tasks. A spoon wrapped in linen. A saucer stacked without clatter. A notation, perhaps, or none. You do not follow him there. It is enough to know that he has left no disturbance behind him. The sequence he built across the night has resolved into this. No tray, no plate, no silver before you now. Only the body fed and the berth restored. The brass lamp continues to burn in its amber circle. You drift beneath it, westbound through Austria, while the dark outside receives station after station without needing witness. The wheels continue their distant steel rhythm. The walnut panel gives back a little warmth. The cream pillow bolsters remain at your head, steady and pale. Under the blanket, Your legs grow heavier, then indistinct. The mouth keeps the faintest trace of chocolate and plain cream, then loses even that, and the train goes on.